Hey everybody, this is Adam Gussow coming at you with something completely different, and I mean this is really different. It's a very short, just a lead-in to a tape that I've got of me playing Whammer Jammer on harmonica at the age of 17, when I'd been playing for, well, I started probably October of 74. This would have been like June of 75. And so let me just set the scene for you. I had a band at that point, my first band. We were called, and I kid you not, we were called Smooth Toad and the Derivative Blues Band. You know, teenagers with acne will come up with strange band names. That literally was the name of my first band. Lloyd Fricker, who has remained a friend of mine, he's actually a professor of psychopharmacology at Albert Einstein. He was the guitar player. I don't think I was plugged into his amp. And we had a guy named Walt on drums. Neither of us can remember Walt's last name. Otherwise, we would get the band back together. But I don't know where Walt is. He's just a guy from West Nyack, New York. This gig was, I think it was our first official gig. It was at the Congers Community Center in my hometown of Congers, New York, about a mile from my house. I don't know if it was for pay or whether we just kind of went to play. It was a community center. You may hear people doing like electronic shuffleboard or whatever people played at that time. There were ping pong tables, there were pool, but I think it was like that shuffleboard, so it was kind of a clacky. Nobody was paying any attention. And here we are, we're set up, Whammer Jammer. So I remember that I had some kind of cheap old tube amp, a big thing, actually a big kind of flat thing, and some kind of mic, some kind of Shure mic. I mean, I really don't know. I wasn't a gearhead, but I had something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let you listen to it, and I'll talk about it a little bit on the outro. But let me tell you one more thing why I think this is important. The reason why I'm letting you hear me at the age of 17, first of all, we can have a conversation about, well, like, could you tell even then that Gussow was going to go on and play some cool stuff later on, decades later? I don't know, but we'll talk about that. Second thing is, I hope that it might inspire you. I hope that you might, on the one hand, say, well, he does something surprisingly good for a 17-year-old who's been playing for 9 months. On the other hand, you know, there's a couple other things you really can't do very well at all. I think, well, I'm not going to say any more. Here is Smooth Toad and the Derivative Blues Band in June of 1975 playing Whammer Jammer. See you on the outro. Okay, well, you know, we got some applause. We somehow made it through. So what'd you think? What was your impression? and I hope you'll tell me what you think in the comments section. I think an interesting takeaway from this is to sort of imagine how I, at the age of 62, am hearing this 17-year-old. Forget that he's my earlier self. And that's how many years ago? 75? It's like 45 years ago. So forget that he's an earlier version of me. Forget that I evolved out of him. What does this guy do well, surprisingly well? What does he not do? So I think I'm going to sort of give you my rundown. Here's how I see it. First thing is I think that this guy, we'll call him Young Gussow. Let's go. I think that Young Gussow has a pretty... First of all, he's not as good as the guitar player, and neither is the drummer. The guitar player kind of holds it together. That's number one, is that bands of 17, 18, 16-year-olds will have different skill levels, and the guitar player, Lloyd, is really holding it together. The second thing is, I'm surprised by how well Young Gussow does that 10-blow bend after 9 months. He kind of nails it, and consistently nails it. That surprises me. And so what I remember is that at that point I was soaking my A-harps. I was taking them, before I played the A-harp, I would run it under water, and then I would shake it out to get the water out, and then I could bend the 10-blow. Everything else sounded really good and loud too, but I could bend the 10-blow. So that's sort of one. That's a takeaway. Second takeaway is that the basic shape of the song is there. So Young Gussow had some ability to kind of, again, there was no YouTube lessons. This was me sitting down with the record, lifting the needle, playing it again and again and again, with no sheet music, nobody teaching me, just trying to figure out what this guy named Magic Dick, the great god, was doing. That's number two. And I think that Young Gussow gets the basic shape of the song. It's recognizable. It's ragged, but it's recognizable. There's certain parts of it that work better than other parts. I think, you know, the opening, just the opening, I don't think I knew how to... The opening's pretty good. I'm not going to go through chorus by chorus. It's clear that there's some portions where I just don't know what Magic Dick was doing. What I'm not sure about is whether I was doing any tongue blocking at all. And of course, this song needs some tongue blocking. It needs it on that opening, where you're sort of swishing your tongue side to side. I'm not sure if Young Gussow knew how to tongue block at all. I think I might have had a little, but I'm not sure I do much on this. Here's something that intrigues me. I knew how to think in terms of the bends. So one of the things that I would do if I were listening to a 17-year-old who comes to me and says he's been playing for 9 months is I would try to assess the bends. He does the 4-hole draw bend pretty well, the 2-hole draw bend pretty well. I don't think I had anything going on really on that 3-draw bend. And that's interesting. That's interesting. I think when I did it, most of the time I was doing it without really any kind of bend. Sort of like that. But I did do a lot of those roll-offs on the 2-draw. So lots of subtleties not there. Lots of subtleties not there. Did it swing? Well, you know, I want you to go back and play it again and assess it. And there were just parts of it that worked and parts that didn't quite work. Anyway, I hope you'll be inspired by that. Go back and listen to it and make your own assessment. Tell me what you think. Tell me in the comments. I mean, pretty good for a 17-year-old, right? I would grant that. Not nearly as good as there are some of the 17-year-olds that are out there right now. And in fact, let me give you one example. Brandon Bailey, at that same age, with the help of Gussow's YouTube lessons on Whammer Jammer and all of his accumulated experience and talent level, was much better than I was at 17, Brandon Bailey. And there's obviously other young players. Nick Clark, much better. These are players who, you know, were just way ahead. So as a cohort of players helping each other out and assessing each other, there's just a whole generation of young players now who are just much better than the kid that I was. But you know, it was DIY back then. It was DIY. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. I have a couple of other. I think I'll post Born in Chicago next, and we'll talk about that. Bye bye.